joining me tonight on Raven Wing Academy. And if you are new here, thank you for subscribing. Even if you haven't subscribed, thank you for stopping by and checking me out. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment down below if there's anything you wanted me to discuss, something you had a question about, or just something you wanted to chat about. But with that, I just wanted to say a little bit about what HeKa is. Okay, so it's kind of like a refresher. It's in the spirit of renewing things. The the Western New Year just concluded. Almost a month ago, and the New Year, the actual New Year, if you will, like the Kemetic New Year, with it coincides with the renewal of the seasons, right? So it will be spring, just like in certain Wiccan traditions or pagan traditions, right? So with that, in the spirit of renewing things and refreshing things, I wanted to just talk a little bit about what HeKa is, right? Okay, so first and foremost, it is a spiritual / scientific discipline uniting the illusory experiences of duality, meaning the inner and the outer, with the upper and the down, with seen and unseen, etc. Right? So this is to say, it is a discipline that seeks to unite the understanding of how these things work in tandem to present the experience that you have as being you, being a body and a person with emotions and thoughts and whatnot, exploring this, life being. Okay. And it also does this through a focus on, you can't really see it because the book is in the way, but a focus on the accountability, right? So that's taking stock of one's own self and the different aspects of yourself and the way that affects yourself as well as people around you, right? So the video that I did on the ninefold soul kind of addresses a lot of what that means, what accountability looks like as far as HeKa is. It's a lot of reading over the laws of Ma'at and understanding and kind of looking at those and kind of dissecting what they mean, and you know what I mean. And it also has a focus on nature. So this is to say, like, the biological sciences, sociological sciences, psychological sciences, right? Again, you got right here nature sciences. So this is talking about things like plants, animal movements, like, patterns of animals, because that can tell you a lot of different things about nature, weather patterns. That's another one, weather patterns. So, you're looking at your freezing seasons, your hot seasons, your drought seasons, and stuff like that, because you have certain plants that grow in certain times and do certain things, right? So that's one of the main things that you would need to know about in order for you to be able to craft medicines, things like that. Justice, balance, and self-improvement, right? So this is to say to keep yourself from kind of really falling into a pattern of behaving according to the will of the animal self, that is just the body, the desires, right? The physical self. You want to adhere to some sense of justice, okay? And it's not really hard to understand what that means. There's really kind of a intuitive understanding of what a thing that is justice is, right? So, people want to be able to be existing in a place that's peaceful, right? That's prosperous, that's actually encouraging, and that kind of helps a person grow, right? It's nurturing, if you will. So that's the kind of thing you mean, and or is meant really by justice in this sense, right? And balance kind of goes right along with that. So this is to say that if something is imbalanced, then you, at the very least, should seek to address the imbalance, right? Whether that be internally within yourself or externally, somewhere that you exist, live, or happen to be. If you see or experience something that's going down, and it's an imbalance in, say, power, or an imbalance in, just really any number of things, right? Like, and it's usually inferring and implying something more intangible than tangible when you're talking about something like balance, right? In a spiritual sense or a philosophical sense, it's talking about, say you like to go out and party and whatnot, you want to balance that with not doing that, right? Because if you do it too much, then you'll probably reprehensibly, irreparably damage your body, right? Your internal organs. Self-improvement goes with those two, justice and balance, because self-improvement is the name of the game, right? And again, this is referring to your internal as well as your external, as well as your external, right? Like, so your extra, the influence you have that's out here that's not directly connected to your body, such as like your exi your external and your internal, that's just a part of your direct experience, you know. So you have to also be worried about the way you affect other things and people, and you know what I mean, and whatnot in your environment, because that's also the way they perceive you is also a part of you, right? That's your reflection. That's their image of you. So anytime you interact with anybody who isn't you, they're interacting with who they think you are, right? Their mental image of you, what they see you as, right? So you want to be able to take note of that and improve where you feel it might be necessary, right? So it could be something like you had noticed that somebody acts a certain way towards you, and you start to try to pay attention to that and realize that sometimes when you're around that person, you have a shitty attitude, right? So that means you need to mop it up, right? Again, accountability, right? So, and it could also be, you know, physical, because a lot of things are physical because of having poor health and poor, like, say, for instance, if you have poor circulation, then it's possible that your hormones and other neurotransmitters aren't getting where they need to be in order for you to actually feel the way you need to feel. So your hormones are displaced, right? Or there could be blockages due to, like I said before, alcohol, drug damage, or what have you. Knowledge of the natural processes. Okay, this is again, this folds right back into the biological sciences and the nature sciences, right? So this isn't just knowing what they are, right? It's knowing how these things work. So it's, you know, examining things like wildlife, and that includes things that are plants and animals, right? As well as their habitats and the elements that make up their habitats, and how those things impact the way they live, how they impact the way those elements exist, all that stuff, right? So you want to study all that, right? Um, Truth is another one of those things that you kind of really have to adhere to, and that's hard for some people because, again, it goes right back to taking accountability for yourself, right? You're not necessarily aware of every time you're not being truthful, just because it's kind of a habit and a self-defensive reaction for a person to say, tell a white lie, or lie by omission, you know, not say something that you feel is going to lead to adverse reactions from people, so you kind of hold back on it, or lying to yourself even, right? Because that's real easy to get into the habit of doing that, and then once you do that, you're kind of living this existence that doesn't actually exist, and you end up living out of balance with what reality really is, right? And that's not good. Um, then you have, like I said before, focus on the physical, then it's emotional, spiritual, and mental health, right? Because again, that's the name of the game, right? It's keeping yourself sane enough and healthy enough internally and externally long enough that you can actually study these processes, these non-physical processes, as well as the physical processes, right? And understand how studying these things, and like how studying these things right here, right? This list I'm going to go over here in a second. Studying these things puts you in contact with the different aspects of what existence is, right? So you get to know the non-physical aspects of existence by examining the physical aspects, right? And understanding the concepts that exist in order for those things to even exist. All right, so and that leads us into like the first thing on the list, which is metaphysics and physics. So it's understanding how those two things unite, right? And a lot of the ways that you can see this demonstrated, or at least attempted to be demonstrated, by older philosophers and older bards, wizards, what have you, poets, right? Writers, just in general, who were, you know, of ancient times, because the only people who could really write back then were the people who were learned and had enough experience with looking at different texts to understand what even text was, right? So you can look at the way they use things like linguistics, phonetics, prose, rhetoric, and vocabulary, and just the form of the body of work in and of itself to demonstrate certain principles or certain non-tangible aspects, right? They write it in a way that you can mentally kind of perceive what they're trying to show you the shape of, right? And again, when I say shape, I'm speaking non-physically, like they're trying to give you, say, like the idea of a thing, like the whole Theseus and the tortoise thing, like, you know, where you have a warrior and he's trying to race a tortoise, and it's like, if the tortoise runs you give the tortoise like a 50-foot head start, and it's like 100-foot race, right? And the tortoise starts, he starts, but in order for him to catch the tortoise, he has to first go half that distance, and he just keeps halving the distance, and you end up with infinite steps that he never actually catches the tortoise, right? That's a shape of an event happening that doesn't actually play out in reality. You see what I mean? That's a thought paradox. It's meant to make you think about the way that things actually play out in reality versus the way you can use your brain to actually kind of compute things or shift things around to actually look at concepts that you can't physically demonstrate. You see what I mean? So it's a non-physically demonstrable shape of thing. You know what I mean? Just like that story is, just like that, because that's giving you an example of something that would be a paradox if it actually happened like that in real life. And in real life, you would easily run past the tortoise, right? So it's a lot of kind of stuff like that, using like parables and things like that when they're writings to demonstrate principles. And again, like I said, kind of metaphysical shapes, if you will, of things and ideas that you can't readily demonstrate physically. Okay. Then you have the psychological sciences, which kind of goes together with the sociological sciences, right? And this is understanding the way people work on an individual level, and like I said before, as well as working within a group or working together, you know what I mean? Or be it family units, at work, whatever the group is, understanding group dynamics, the way people flow and the way that people are, say, catalyzed or even pacified, right? The biological science, nature sciences, we just went through that. A lot of that, again, is what you would know as root work or the herbal sciences or botania, right? Botany. But specifically botany when it comes to like healing or knowing your poisonous or toxic herbs, stuff like that, edible roots and things like that, medicinal, right? Learning to identify a lot of those. We'll be going through a lot of that here and on the Patreon here soon. It's understanding the connections of ritual and ceremonial um endeavors, or you know what I'm saying, I guess actions, if you will. Say, the enacting or performing a ritual or ceremony. It's knowing the what the individual aspects of it are. Say what sigils you're using, how many times you do said incantation, what this incantation and these sigils actually are standing for. You know what I mean? What is the spiritual and mental aspect that they're standing for? Knowing a lot of that, right? And then the way that that would tie into these up here, right? Your psychological, your sociological, biological, and nature sciences, right? It's a lot of arts, engineering, and mechanics, understanding the way that different things play together, different dynamics work in the physical world in order to get you results that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get using simpler mechanisms. Say like, the trebuchet versus throwing a ball, right? That's a catapult. It's not really a catapult, but let's just say a catapult, right? Versus throwing a ball, right? It's like the same thing, only that catapult is using mechanisms and engineering to just, I don't even know how many times, like 10,000x the arm throw, right? So it's a lot of understanding how things like that work, and angles and trigonometry, calculus, not necessarily those, but those are examples of what I mean. Like, because you're going to have to understand different like angles and stuff like that in order to, say, create a thing, right? To build something that is not necessarily that you would have to know them, like say by textbook, and know this number and that number and what scientist invented this and that. You would just have to have some kind of functional understanding of these, right? And a lot of that can be gleaned just by working with the physical things, like say actually working with something that you would have to make with angles, and find a way to make it support itself. Like doing that can develop an intuitive understanding of how things like architecture or structure building work, right? Study of balance and scale with waveforms and vibration and frequency. Okay, and so this one is more understanding. It kind of goes back to multiliteration, right? So when you're reading a lot of ancient texts, you'll hear those phrases a lot, right? You'll hear balance, scale, waveforms, frequency, vibration, and initially it doesn't really sound like those things go together, but if you really pay attention and think about what they are, they all kind of indicate each other, even in the way that they all can be weight, or the way that weight moves, right? They can all be different. I guess you could say notes on like this could be a scale, as in an actual song scale, right? It's scale as far as like size, right? Getting big, getting smaller, right? That's what this is the study of. So it's the study of all of those things for each of those words, what each of those words represents, right? The multiliterate of all of those words. So the multiliterate of balance, that would be, being able to keep your balance physically, right? Being able to stand and walk, being able to keep your balance morally, being able to keep your balance mentally, right? And so on and so forth. So this would be the study of waveforms. So it wouldn't just be, say, physical waveforms. It would also be waveforms such as like patterns, right? Which would lead you into vibrations and frequencies. So it's a study of all of these things on their physical and non-physical levels, right? And most of this isn't a conclusive list. Like there's other things on the list, right, that you would end up studying or at least looking into when you're studying things like HeKa, right? Because what this word translates into is roughly the power or the spirit of the spiritual self, right? So it's the you that is more you than this physical you. You're drawing on that, right? That non-physical aspect of you that is still in touch with all these different elements that are non-physical and physical, right? That you're just a walking version of, right? Like I said before, like all of your skin, your bones, right, and all the neurotransmitters and all the minerals and stuff in your blood, that's all earth, right? Your blood in and of itself is a mixture of earth and water, right? Then you have the wind going in and out of your body that's keeping you active, is acting as a respiration. So it's a way to get energy to the cells, right? Then you also have the fire / electricity, which allows you to see and think and feel anything that's zapping back and forth between your fucking your synapses, right, and your nervous system, right? So you are literally all of these elements bound together, just walking around experiencing the rest of the elements bound together in different ways, right? And that's one of the main things that you have to mentally understand and kind of grasp when you go to study really any arcane subject or any arcane discipline, be it um, ancient Hellenism, right, or the Eritrean religions of the Vatican, right, or like HeKa or the Sumerian religions, you know what I'm saying, Zoroastrianism, like that's really the main thing, especially even when you're talking about ancient Hinduism, right, ancient Buddhism, they got esoteric Buddhism, when you're talking about looking at the what is it, the younger and the elder Futhark, right? So that's your Norse traditions right there. I hate using the word paganism just because it has slapped a negative connotation on it. So I don't like to use that, even though it's not really, you know what I mean, a bad word. It essentially used to just mean people or other people, right? But yeah, so looking at all these different disciplines, like, you'll find this common thread that a lot of them have their own labels and terms for what you're supposed to be getting from it, but they're all addressing things like this, right? It's just the terms, the words they would use back then are different, but you see them now even in the terms we use to describe things. Like, for instance, the Greeks used to refer to sun and sun things as Helios, right? That's why, you know what I mean, we have things like Heliopolis or helium, right? That's why these are called that thing, because it's an association with the thing that is literally helium and hydrogen, right? The sun. So understanding these connections, not just, because again, you notice etymology is not up here, but that kind of folds in with linguistics, phonetics, prose, rhetoric, vocabulary, and form, right? Because a huge part of being able to actually and accurately write your spells, okay, and even execute a spell, enchantment, or what have you, is understanding precisely the words that you're using, right? Because you want them to come out of your mouth the same way they're in your head. Those things need to be connected that way, right? And the thing you're doing, the actions you're performing, also need to reflect that word, or words, as the case may be, right? So you're doing what you wrote, what you said. It's that trinity of connection, right? That's what you need, right? And it's important to understand the words you used, where they come from, what they might actually mean, because there's some words. English is a complicated language to use spell-wise. That's a lot of what the whole point of a lot of these ancient tales that are told, or not even really ancient, but the tales that are told of people using magic and they're getting their words mixed up, or the words are used against them in the spell flip-flops or whatever. That's what that's trying to illustrate to you, is that when you're trying to enchant something, you're trying to write a spell, you're trying to focus on anything where you have to write. You want the words that come out onto the page or out of your mouth to be the same as the ones that were in your head, right? So a lot of it is just is kind of the things that you've already probably studied in school. I don't know, most people have at least gone to high school, right? Some people went to college, but it's a lot of that same kind of stuff, but it's more in depth, right? A lot of what you have to pay high dollars for to learn in universities and stuff like that is things that you were initially just supposed to be able to study, right? Before the Prussian school model was adapted by the United States. So, um, yeah, that's really all I wanted to say. Just a little refresher on what HeKa is. And let's see, the next video I'm going to upload is going to be maybe the one on concretization, or maybe no, I think I know. We got February coming up. Yeah, I know what I'm gonna do. Well, anyway, thanks for stopping by and hanging out for a little bit. And go ahead and check out my Patreon if you would like to, so help support the channel. Like, share, subscribe. Remember to comment if you have anything that you are curious about, or you wanted to ask, or something you just wanted me to look into, or you wanted some advice on something. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you guys next time.